Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're going to talk about what happens when a huge retail bankruptcy hits really close to home. It might seem like a story about just one store, but trust me, it tells us a whole lot more about the massive shifts happening in our economy.
Okay, let's just dive right in with a simple question. We're looking at a potential new vacancy at the Del Amo Fashion Center. And you might think, so what? It's just one empty storefront. But the impact? Well, it spreads out in waves, kind of like a ripple in a pond.
So first things first, we have to look at the event that started this whole thing. You can think of this as the stone dropping into the water. The initial splash that creates all the ripples we're about to explore.
And boom, here's the headline that kicked it all off. A legacy brand, a name we all recognize, has officially filed for bankruptcy. Now this isn't just some corporate move on paper. It's a huge signal that big changes are coming for malls all over the country, including right here in the South Bay.
What's really fascinating here is the why. The company didn't just point a finger at one single thing. Instead, they talked about this combination of really powerful economic headwinds that created what they literally called a perfect storm.
And this breaks it down perfectly. You've got declining sales, that shows us that our shopping habits are changing. Then there's persistent inflation, which, squeezes everybody, the business and its customers. And finally, tariff uncertainty. That makes it almost impossible to plan for the future. These are the exact challenges hitting so many stores in our malls.
Okay, on to the first and most immediate ripple. Let's really look at the direct effect this is going to have on the Del Amo Fashion Center itself.
180. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's how many stores are starting liquidation sales. This suddenly puts the local Del Amo store into this much, much larger story of a nationwide collapse for the brand.
So here's the real problem for a mall operator like Simon Property Group. It's not just about finding a new tenant. The challenge, the really tricky part, is filling this specific, mid-sized store at a time when the demand for traditional clothing stores is actually shrinking. That is a massive headache.
All right, now let's trace that second ripple as it moves beyond the mall's walls and out into the community. Because this is the human cost.
Yeah, this is so much more than an empty store. We're talking about jobs. We're talking about the financial stability of people who live here, who are part of a retail workforce that's already dealing with the incredible pressure of the South Bay's high cost of living. Every single closure like this just tightens that squeeze.
And for our third ripple, we have to zoom all the way out to see the big picture. This one event isn't just some random thing, it's actually a symptom of a much larger trend that is completely reshaping the entire retail world. See, this bankruptcy isn't actually the start of a new problem. Experts have a term for this. They call it a lagging indicator. Basically, it's an event that just confirms a pattern that's been building for years. The storm was already brewing. This is just the thunder finally rolling in.
Now, to get an even clearer idea of what's happening to local businesses, it's super helpful to look at another recent closure. Because the Eddie Bauer story, it's not happening in a vacuum, and this next example gives us a really fascinating contrast. And man, if you're from the area, this one probably hits you right in the heart. The Rajin Cajun Cafe, a total local institution, is shutting its doors after more than 3 decades. It just goes to show you that the pressures on South Bay businesses are coming from all sorts of different directions.
And putting them side by side like this, wow, it just lays it all out. On one side, you have a giant national chain that's falling victim to these huge systemic mall pressures. And on the other, you have an independent, Main Street kind of business closing because of a personal choice, which really shines a light on how fragile local businesses can be. 2 closures, but they tell 2 very different stories about our economy.
So what happens when we put all these pieces together? What are these 2 very different closures trying to tell us about the future of the places where we shop and hang out?
Well, the big takeaway here is pretty hard to avoid. The old way of doing things is under some serious stress. If malls and shopping centers want to survive, they have to innovate. They absolutely cannot rely on the old playbook of just filling spaces with clothing stores anymore. They have to evolve. Period.
And that really leaves all of us with the big final question for the future of our own communities. As these familiar names and places start to vanish from our malls and our main streets, we've got to ask, what's going to fill these empty spaces? And maybe, just maybe, the more important question is, what should?